I'm Nadia Taylor, Training and Exercise Manager for the Readiness Support Center. And this is Semper Gumby, a podcast about emergency management in the Corps of Engineers. We'll cover topics about disaster response and recovery, FEMA mission assignments, and Corps-specific response authorities under which we operate for things like flood fighting and coastal emergencies. Today we're going to be talking about personal disaster preparedness, and we have with us Dave Peterson. So Dave, what do you do for the Corps?
I'm an emergency manager for the Savannah district, and it's a great opportunity. Our number one threat is hurricanes, so preparedness is a big deal for us, especially since we haven't had a hurricane in quite some time, that people need to be reminded constantly that they must be prepared and ready to evacuate if needed.
All right. Well, our focus is a little different today than some of our other episodes because this is really about getting you and your family ready for disasters. So let's talk about mitigation first. What can we do to mitigate risks personally and for our own families?
One of the best things we can do as Americans is make sure that we have insurance. Homeowners insurance, renters insurance. That's there as that security blanket for you in case something happens unexpected. And living on the coast with climate change, anything unexpected can happen. So I highly recommend that you have homeowners insurance, renters insurance, but specifically flood insurance, because only flood insurance is offered through the National Flood Insurance Program. So that's the best thing to go for, is make sure you have flood insurance.
And I know some people might say, well, I don't live in the floodplain, or I'm way inland, I don't need flood insurance. But what would you say to that?
Well, get it anyway, because that's good. If you don't live in a floodplain, that's excellent. But your insurance, if you get the flood insurance, then it's very inexpensive. It's probably right now in 2016, about $140 annually for that coverage if you don't live in a floodplain. But what that buys you is that if you ever do have any water damage, insurance companies will find any way they can to deny a claim. Under that flood insurance protection, you are protected.
Well, now, what about preparation? Because I know here in Mobile, of course, our biggest risk is hurricanes, on the coast as well, where you live. Other people, earthquakes might be the biggest threat. I think the point of that is know what risks are in your area. But how do we prepare for that? Let's use hurricanes for an example. What's the first step?
Well, the first step, you just said it, is know what the hazards are and what your risks are. Any place you live, your local emergency management agency probably has a website, and you can look up to see what they are saying, what your hazards are. When you know those, then you can prepare yourself for what to expect. It's very difficult to prepare for tornadoes, but they've gotten so much better, at least predicting when or where tornadoes may happen, that it's saving lives in the Midwest and tornado-prone places. For things like hurricanes, we get plenty of time and advance notice to go. The big thing is then having what you need to get out of your area and get to a safe place. That's all your supplies that you will need for who knows how many days, making sure that your automobile is ready and that your family's ready.
I have 2 children, and I think other families, regardless of how many children you have, when you look at some of these lists of things that I need per family member, 1 gallon of water per person per day, is that what it is?
They typically say 1 gallon of water per day is the minimum per person. I have a friend who's got 8 children, so between his children and his wife, it'd be 10 gallons of water per day. You'd fill up a tractor trailer with all the stuff you needed to get out of town with. So what I tell people is prepare to what level you're willing to prepare for. Identify what is it that you're willing to, what's your comfort level, and prepare to that. You can do preparation by making a list of stuff that you need to grab out of your house. That's low preparation, but that's more preparation than most Americans do right now. Most people they haven't even thought about it. So you can make a list, or you can start putting things together in a bag, or you can have a whole complete kit ready to go that you can load in a car and get out of there.
And I think that's the thing, though, that people think well, I have to have a whole complete kit or nothing. There's no in between. And looking at that whole complete kit can be overwhelming when you have no children or 8 children, as you said. But what would you say to those folks who are like, they just throw their hands up and they say, it's too much for me?
You're right about that. Most people look at it and they'll say, no, I can't do that. And they just won't do it. So what I do, I have a little thing called a P38. And people who know any World War II or anything, they'll know the P38 is a little can opener, tiny can opener that's fit on your keychain. But I'd say start with a P38. Get anything that you can put together that's going to start your kit. And again, you prepare for that. My wife, her kit, well, it's a corkscrew. She knows that she's going to have wine when she evacuates. I'm not sure if I should say that, but she also knows that red wine is better than white wine because you have to chill white wine where red wine doesn't have to be chilled. So that's her preparedness kit. Now, I have another preparedness kit for us, so she's not alone with that. But you can do whatever you want as long as you're thinking about it. Even if you have just one item, you've got a kit, and then build from there. Pocket change, prescription medicine that you have spares, sunblock, mosquito spray, any little things will help build your kit.
So you've mentioned a few items. You've mentioned your can opener, 1 gallon of water per person per day. What are some other things that people can start thinking about gathering for their own personal preparedness kit?
Well, let's say you can't fit that 1 gallon of water per day, and normal guidelines just have 3 to 5 days of supplies for yourself and your family. If you can't do all those jugs of water, well, just have 1 jug and then be prepared that you're going to have to find a place to get water if necessary. If you don't want to carry any water at all, carry cash. That way, cash can buy things. We rely so much on credit cards, but sometimes credit card machines aren't working, and cash is the only thing that's going to get you to barter for something. There's all sorts of little simple things, handy wipes, clothing, fresh underwear, fresh skivvies. That's a great thing to have. If you got clean socks, you got all sorts of things.
Well, I think what stops a lot of people too is this mentality that it's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen to me. And if anything, we are seeing natural disasters happen more and more frequently, it seems.
Well, the president has put out an official proclamation, executive order, that we're going to fight climate change, or we're going to prepare for it. And we need to prepare for it because it's happening. If you go to Columbia, South Carolina, which is in the middle of the state of South Carolina, and you find fossilized fish, then it's a pure indicator that the climate was different tens of thousands, millions of years ago. So you have to be very open to the fact that we do have to tackle climate change. So with that, you also have to be prepared that things are changing in ways that we've never seen before. Got to prepare for that.
One other thing that I wanted to ask you about, I know in speaking with you before, you've talked about some different apps, disaster preparedness apps, and they're really good resources. So can you tell me a little bit about apps you might be able to get on a smartphone?
Well, most states, I can say for the Southeast region, they have apps for your smartphone, for your iPad, for tablets. And I highly recommend downloading those because even my community, I come from the Savannah district, our Chatham County has an app for the county, and it gives you an opportunity to get some very valuable updates. The state apps have ties to the National Weather Service, so you can actually have an app that is actually a weather radio. So you're getting updates from there. There's also an app that you can download for everybody in your family, and it's a way to find your family members. So it's a GPS-based app. But even when cell towers are down, the GPS will still work because it's the satellite's up in space. So that's a definite way that if you're separated from your family members, you'll be able to look at this app and find where people are and know that they're either safe or that they may be in harm's way, and you can work to get help for them.
Now, that's a good point, too, that I wanted to ask you about, because I know personally my family, we have a space inside our house that we know to go to if there's a tornado warning or something. And to be clear, I mean, we have gone in this little cubby under the stairs several times this spring even. I mean, disasters can happen at any point. But we also have a meetup place elsewhere so that if there's ever a natural disaster and we are separated, or there's an evacuation and we're separated, we know that there's one spot we can all go to and stay there until we are all there. And it's just like a meetup spot. So is that something you would recommend for other people?
That's excellent. And I'm proud that you have that, because you're better than a lot of other people. It's so important to have a plan with your family of where you'll meet. You also have to have your kids memorize or have some way that they get a phone number of someone who's outside of the impacted area. So, have an out-of-state family member that somebody can call in and check in to say, I'm okay. But having those meetup places, because if your child's at daycare, in the daytime you're at work and something happens, I can't imagine anything worse than not knowing where your child is or how to find your children. So those link-up places, a local link-up place and a link-up place somewhere outside of what you would think the impacted area is, very important to have.
Well, let's talk about children, since you bring that up there as well, because I know it's kind of a little diversion here, but you did really interesting work for your master's thesis about preparing children for disasters through Dr. Seuss books. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did my master's thesis. It was called Conveying Disaster Theory to Children Using Dr. Seuss. And everybody knows who Dr. Seuss is. 3/4 of all Americans' first book is a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah, I literally read Cat in the Hat last night to my son.
So it's an exciting way for me, I believe, that many organizations, agencies have put out coloring books, and they've created little characters that convey disasters, like, oh, this is whomever. But Dr. Seuss is a legacy. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, parents, children, everybody knows Dr. Seuss. So when you experience a disaster, for children especially, it's the first time perhaps they've ever seen something so devastating. And when you see disasters, even when you see it on television, the images children see can really adversely affect their psychological well-being and emotional well-being. To sit down with them using a Dr. Seuss book, and I'll use The Cat in the Hat for instance, I convey to children in simple terms that a disaster is a series of problems that just need solutions. And every problem does have a solution. We can fix everything. So if you can reassure your child that all these problems are going to get fixed, and things are going to get better, that can help your child without having a type of PTSD on them, because that has long-term imprints on the brain that can hurt a child in their development. So if you think of the Cat in the Hat, the house was destroyed. They trashed the house, but the cat comes in with his cleanup machine and makes everything better. And in the end of the story, the kids are actually better for the event. And just like we do here in the United States, FEMA under the National Response Framework and through recovery actions at a federal, state, and local level, we strive to make things better than they were before the disaster. And that's evident in many disaster sites. I mean, you look in New York and New Orleans. Things are arguably better than they were before the incident. So that is something that I advocate for families to pick up a Dr. Seuss book, because it is a way that you can find a bridge with your child, and you can speak on terms that they understand, and they can speak on terms that you understand, since you both know who Dr. Seuss is.
Dr. Seuss was a wise, wise man. He really was, on so many issues. Well, what else would you like people to know about personal disaster preparedness that we haven't covered?
It's not something that you should deny, because like we said earlier, when you look at the lists, they can be overwhelming. And some people say they are going to do it. I mean, I have some friends who have binders, and they've got a little binder, and they're great, they're organized, they have a little family flyaway kit. Not everybody's like that, but you don't have to be perfect to have a good kit and to be prepared to get out of Dodge if you need to. I say make that list. There are plenty of lists out there. We've made one in Savannah District for our employees. But also remember that, especially for people who are involved in emergency response and people involved in the Corps of Engineers, we're here to help the nation get back on its feet if it's ever knocked down by a disaster. So you are important. You're important to somebody. You're important to your mom. And being prepared is hugely important because I know, speaking as an emergency manager, I need the skills that the engineers in my district offer. So I need to make sure that they evacuate their families and they're safe so they can come back and help us get back on our feet. And that's, I guess, what I'd say is that self-preparedness isn't just for you. It's to make sure the organization can do what we have to do to help the American public.
That's a really good point. And there's one, there's countless resources out there, the apps that we mentioned as well, but there's also ready.gov. It's a great website. It's got everything from hurricanes to floods to volcanoes, just depending on the risks in your area. Tell me a little bit about that website.
I totally advocate ready.gov because it's a great app. It works well on your laptop, on your devices, good information on there. And it also has good leads to other things. So if you look at ready.gov, that's the federal level. There's little things in there for kids. There are things in there that all the way from what to pack in a kit to what to do with your house and what documents to have. So definitely go to ready.gov. Also, look at what your state may have because your state is even more focused on the particular hazards that you face and locally. Also, the American Red Cross has some great apps. If you type disaster in your app store, you may find some things that are really interesting.
Well, just a quick plug. I know there's not really a season for earthquakes or tsunamis or anything, but hurricane season, everyone I'm sure already knows, June 1st through November 30th. So please get prepared before hurricane season. Your family needs you, your mama needs you, and the Corps of Engineers needs you. We want to thank Dave Peterson. Thank you so much for being here, and hopefully people be a little bit more prepared, even if it just starts with a can opener.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
That's all we have for today's episode. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you've learned something. Please subscribe to our feed and check back for future episodes. I'm Nadia Taylor, and this is Semper Gumby.